Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishna Nazir, Parak Zayin, Chapter 7, Mishna Gimel, Mishna 3. Now, yesterday were the sources of impurity that if through them a Nazir becomes Tameh, he has to bring a set of sacrifices, he has to shave his head, and he has to start over again. Now we're going to have the list of the things that, although they make the Nazir Tameh, they will not have the same consequences. Okay, Avol, however, Hasachachais va'parais. Schachais are overhanging branches, and parais are projections of a wall. Now, what's happening here is that you've got, let's say, the tree branch. We're not talking about tree branches that are next to each other that would form a roof, but branches that are separate. And under one of these branches is a dead body, or let's say a kazayas of a dead body. It's under one of these branches. And we know that Nazir knows he passed through under here, but he's not sure, did he pass under the branch that has the dead body, let's say that has the flesh of that has the corpse or not. He didn't know. That's the cases. Sachachais means, again, the branches. Parais means the same thing. Let's say they have these projections that are coming out of a wall. And the same idea. One of them had a mace, one of them had something of a corpse under it, and he's not sure as to whether he walked under it or not. So in these cases, we say that although we don't know for sure that he did walk under the one that had, because he would have walked under the branch that had the flesh of the corpse under it, then that would have been a roof, that would have been an oil, that would have made him tameh. But he's not sure which did he or didn't he. Okay, and the same thing with the prois, which are the projections from the wall. In these cases, the halacha is that he has to consider himself tameh out of doubt. Now, really, these cases that we're talking about the branches, we're talking about these projections out of the wall. These are in public areas. These are not these are in areas where people go, and therefore there is a rule: Safek tumah b'reshus harabim. If you have a question about tumah in a public area, which doesn't mean the same public area b'reshus harabim like by Shabbos, but you have a question of tumah in a public area, the halacha is you can be lenient. So really, here in this case, he's not sure which one he walked under. Halacha he should be tar. But the Rabbana, the sages, restrict and said he has to consider himself tameh, impure. Okay, that's the first two cases. Beis hapras. Beis hapras is a situation where a field had a grave in it, and that field was plowed. So there's a concern that the plow may have pulled some bone fragments from the grave and moved them to other parts of the field. The rabbis therefore decree that an area of 100 amos surrounding the grave be treated as if it contains bone fragments. Why 100 amos? A plow certainly does not move the fragments more than 100 amos. Therefore, a person who walked through such a field and possibly touched or moved one of these fragments becomes tameh with corpse tumah. Again, this is a rabbinic decree. Okay. The Eretz Ha'amim and the lands outside of Eretz Yisrael. We've had this before. The lands outside of Eretz Yisrael, if you go outside of Eretz Yisrael, you're considered automatically tameh. Again, this is a rabbinic decree. The concern was that when it comes to lands outside of Eretz Yisrael, the dead were not always buried in cemeteries, and therefore there's always a concern that wherever you're going, you may be, going over a dead body, and therefore the Rabbanan said that outside of Eretz Yisrael, that makes you impure. Okay? Now, these four cases, as we've explained, are all rabbinic decrees. And therefore, a rabbinic decree is not going to make the Nazir, who became tameh, have to bring sacrifices, have to start all over again, because it's only rabbinic. And therefore, these four cases are one group of rabbinic law of impurity, which will not make the Nazir have to cut his hair and start all over again. Okay, that's the first set. The next set is the following. V'hagoylel. A goylel is the cover of a coffin. V'hadaifik are the walls of a coffin. Now these things, the halacha is that they make you impure. And they make you impure on a Torah level. Or revius dam, or let's say let's say one second, he was right. There was a quarter lug of blood, and he may have touched it, he may have moved it, he might have hovered over it, and therefore he was like an oel over it. May have been under the same roof of it. So that's revius dam. I'm sorry. The revius dam v'oel v'roiva ka'atzamais. You have a quarter lug of blood, and it's under the same tent, or a quarter kav of bones, and it's under, let's say, the covering of a roof. The halacha is, in these situations, according to Torah law, you're impure. Not only impure, you need paraduma water, to purify yourself. But still, the halacha is going to be that these cases, whether we're talking about so far, we'll have more examples, but we're talking about the cover of the grave, the wall of the grave, this quarter lug of blood under this, and you're under the same tent as it, or the quarter kav of bones, and you're under the same tent of it, and we'll elaborate on that a little bit more. The kelim anoigim b'meis, or utensils that touch a corpse. The halacha is that certain utensils, which I believe it's talking about metal utensils. The halacha is, if a metal utensil touch a corpse, the utensil gets the same status as a corpse. And if you touch, it's like touching a corpse, and you now have to go through the whole 7-day period with the paraduma water, etc. Okay? Now, in all these cases, we're still saying that although you are impure, and you're impure for 7 days, and you need to go through the same process that you do if you came into contact with a dead body, nonetheless, this will not make the Kohen of this Nazir have to shave his head, bring the kabbalah and start all over again, even though these are all doraisi, these are all Torah sources of impurity. Nonetheless, the Kohen does not have to start all over. The Nazir doesn't have to start all over again, or shave his hair, or bring karbanis. The reason in these cases it's that way is because we're not talking about a tumah that directly comes, well, in certain cases, for instance, when we're talking about the cover of the grave, the walls of the grave, the utensils that touch the grave, these are not impurities that you're becoming impure directly from the corpse. These are things related to the corpse. And because of that, they are like the corpse and they become tameh. But they are not tumas that are considered tumah that comes directly from the corpse. And therefore, this kind of tumah does not cause the Nazir to have to basically start all over again. Shave his head, bring the karbanis for impurity, and start all over again. That's the halacha. That's the law. Now, regarding there are two examples here that don't fit that description. If you have a quarter lug of blood, or you have a kav of bones, that's the mace. That's the dead person himself. Nonetheless, and we know that according to Torah law, that makes you impure. However, as we mentioned yesterday, there's a halacha Moshe from Sinai. There's a halacha from Moshe that Moshe received from Sinai, that when it comes to a Nazir, these sources of impurity will only make a Nazir have to start over again if you have, as we mentioned yesterday, a half a lug of blood or a full kav of bones. Even though less than that, according to Torah law, will make you impure, nonetheless, when it comes to affecting the Nazir, you have to have a larger amount. Okay, so far, now we have that group where we're talking about the things that are impure from a dead body. They have a Torah law like that, but they still do not affect the Nazir. Just want to mention one thing here, if I could find it. Okay. When we talk about, the bones and the blood that are halakhically enough to make you impure, but would not affect you as being a Nazir, that's only as the Mishna says, v'ohel, whether you're under this, only when it's talking about the tumah of ohel with these things. But if, let's say, as I'll read here, however, if he touches or carries the bones, he shaves even for a quarter kav, even if they were crushed, and no fragment is even the size of a barley corn. When we spoke about those sizes yesterday. If you're talking about now a quarter of the blood, or even a quarter lug of the blood, a quarter kav of the bones, The halacha is that only under the say, if it's a question of tumah of ohel, do we say that do not affect the nazir, in the sense of having to start all over again. But if he didn't, but if he touched it or he carried it, then even this size would actually make him have to start all over again. And even if the bones we're talking about were completely crushed, they're pulverized. There's not even a barley corn of a bone fragment that's left. There's no fragment even the size of a barley corn, which we said yesterday would be enough to make him impure if he touched it or he carried it, and you have to start all over again. Even if you don't have that, but you have a quarter kav of bone, it could be bone powder, and this is something that he touched or he moved, that would now make him impure to the point of having to start all over again. Our Mishna is talking about when you have the size of a quarter lug of blood, a quarter of the bones, is talking about when we're dealing with oah, with a tent, under the same tent, or being a tent over it. This is a situation where we say, although you'll become impure like touching a dead body, it would not affect the nazir. All right, we'll continue tomorrow.
Thank you, Rabbi. So how do we characterize the extent of the tumah involved?
Good day. I'm not sure what you mean.